Just what is this connection between orchids and hamburgers? It is a struggle for survival, and the orchid, along with a host of nature's treasures, are losing. Orchids and about half of the species of living organisms live in tropical rainforests. Hamburgers, of course, come from cows, and cows eat grass. Unfortunately, we have long ago used up nature's supply of grassland and have been hacking away at forests as though they were an enemy to subdue. The rainforests of the tropics represent the only virgin land left suitable for agriculture. It is being cleared at the rate of about 70,000 square miles each year. This is an area larger than the state of Illinois. If this rate continues, it will all be gone in less than 60 years. Virtually all of the beef used by the fast food industry comes from destroyed rainforests of Central and South America. Let's take a look at a rainforest and see why this is such a tragedy. Not surprisingly, it rains a lot in a rainforest. 80 inches is the official minimum, but it can be as much as 600 inches per year. By comparison, the Midwestern United States receives about 30 inches of rain each year. This abundance of moisture, along with year-round warm temperatures, makes a perfect greenhouse for nature's experiments with plant life. Of the 250,000 species of flowering plants in the world, over 50% of them live in the tropics. It is further estimated that there are probably another 100,000 that haven't even been discovered yet. A typical acre of rainforest can contain over 200 species of trees, whereas a high-quality temperate forest might have a dozen. One of the most spectacular tropical trees isn't even a proper tree. It is a vine that starts out life as a seedling in a crotch or crevice of a real tree. It grows up, over, and around its host, while sending roots down to the ground. Because it doesn't have to waste time and energy by building a sturdy trunk, it easily overtops the host and effectively shades it from the sun. The roots cause further damage by literally strangling the host to death. The tree is known as the strangler fig. When not crowded out by other forest trees, they frequently take on strange and bizarre forms. One of the most striking aspects of tropical trees is the spectacular flowering. Unlike temperate trees, which tend to have small and inconspicuous flowers at about the same time in spring, most tropical trees have very large and showy flowers. And because of the continuous warm weather, there is no need for the flush of springtime. There is always something in bloom. In addition to the hundreds of species of trees in a rainforest, each tree supports a whole garden of its own. Thousands of species of epiphytes, or air plants, live on the trees. In fact, they can so heavily burden the tree that it ultimately topples over under the sheer weight of the epiphyte load. Epiphytes root themselves in the nooks and crannies of trees. They live by collecting moisture and nutrients from the rainwater and debris as it runs down the tree. The relationship with the tree is truly mutualistic. The tree provides a habitat for the epiphyte. The epiphytes can develop such dense mats that the trees develop roots at canopy height, which extract nutrients from the epiphytes as though they were soil. One family of epiphytes, the bromeliads, can form watertight tanks with their leaves. These fill up with rainwater and support an incredible diversity of life high up in the forest canopy. Countless insects reproduce in bromeliad tanks, and tadpoles can develop into frogs without ever seeing a pond. But the best-known epiphytes are the orchids. With about 25,000 species worldwide, they make up 10% of all flowering plants. Although usually associated with spectacular beauty, one of them, the vanilla orchid, is the basic flavoring for just about everything good and fattening. The vanilla is extracted from the seed pods through a very complex process. But beyond this one commercially useful orchid, most of the rest are enjoyed purely as expressions of the beauty of nature. The greenhouse environment of the tropics provides a nurturing habitat for no end of surprises. Ferns the size of trees. Plants that shrink away when touched. A beetle with an air horn. Fence posts that refuse to play dead. A banana tree growing out of a rotting stump. And a virtual garden growing on another stump. This flower belongs to a very interesting plant called a kalanchoe. In addition to reproducing by the usual flowers and seeds, it can generate entire new plants from fallen leaves. As incredible as it may seem, even this extinct volcano will someday be a lush, verdant forest if just left to nature. In fact, it is already showing signs of new vegetation. The endless diversity of plant life makes possible an equally diverse animal community. If remaining inconspicuous doesn't keep this moth out of trouble, he has another trick to scare off predators. He flashes phony eye spots that make him look like an owl. One of the more enterprising insects of the tropical forest is the leaf-cutting ant. These little fellows were cultivating mushrooms long before man even existed. They spend their entire lives cutting leaves into manageable bits and carrying them back to their nest. Their days are one long tedium of cut and carry. Life would be so much easier if they would simply eat the leaves. But like man and his hamburgers, the ant converts the fruits of his harvest into a food more desirable. The bits and pieces of vegetation are fed to a fungus garden carefully maintained in the nest. The mushrooms thus grown are the sole source of food for the entire colony. The acacia tree and the pseudomyrmex ant represent another example of the complex interrelationships in nature. The ant defends a tree from leaf-cutting insects, and the tree provides a home and a source of food for the ant. The ants live in the hollow thorns and attack with a painful sting anything that comes in contact with the tree. At the tips of the young leaves, the tree produces nutritious protein nodules as food for the ants. The ant never has to leave its home in the acacia tree. This very attractive fruit is called the quetzal fruit because it is the favorite food of one of the prettiest of tropical birds, the quetzal. But the title for the gaudiest colors certainly goes to the scarlet macaw. The tropics are the home to the smallest as well as the largest birds in the world. The adult Jabiru stork stands 4 to 5 feet tall and has a wingspread of about 9 feet. The American tropics are also home to one of the cuddliest animals on Earth. Although noted primarily for their relaxed way of life, the sloth is an interesting animal in many ways. Because their diet is made up of leaves and flowers, they are very important to forest ecology in controlling the rampant growth of vegetation. Although there is also a three-toed species, this one is known as a two-toed sloth for obvious reasons. One of the most bizarre aspects of sloth behavior is their compulsion to climb down from the canopy about once a week to urinate and defecate in a hole neatly dug at the base of the tree. The most obvious animals of the forest are the monkeys. The dog-like barking of the howler monkey can be heard for miles. Although far less boisterous, the white-faced monkey has an interest in visitors that makes one wonder just who is observing whom. But the prize for agility certainly goes to the spider monkey. The natural result of year-round flowering of tropical trees is a continual availability of fruit. This provides a food supply for numerous fruit-eating animals, such as birds and bats. Bats are extremely important in forest ecology. They are the primary pollinators of many tropical fruits like bananas, cashews, and avocados. They are also responsible for dispersing seeds by spitting out and defecating them as they fly about. They are the Johnny Appleseeds of the jungle. But of course, the animal with the greatest impact on the forest has been the most recent arrival. Man has not only succeeded in destroying vast tracts of forest, but it is very likely that people alive today will live to see the total destruction of what little is left. Our initial interest in forests was as a source of fuel and building materials. With our powerful modern machines and equipment, we can convert giant trees into boards in a matter of minutes. The forest products industry is rapidly converting nature's treasures into items of questionable value, like toothpicks, paper bags, and chopsticks. Japan alone imports 45 million disposable chopsticks every month. The destruction of forests for paper bags is also largely unnecessary. One thing we can all do is say, "No bag, please," the next time a clerk hands us one for something we could just easily put in our pocket. One of the earliest excuses for clearing rainforest was to satisfy man's craving for bananas. Sprawling plantations now blanket areas which were once lowland tropical forests. The so-called banana tree isn't a tree at all. It is actually more closely related to grass. It grows by sending up successively longer and taller leaf stalks from a tuberous corm at the base. A full-grown banana plant is one of the largest non-woody plants in the world. At maturity, it sends up a flower stalk, which itself resembles a giant banana. After the flower opens, the fruit develops in concentric rings at the base of the flower. When the fruit matures, the plant dies, for it can flower only once. But just like grass, there is a continual supply of new shoots arising from the base. The cultivated banana is said to have originated somewhere in Africa, but there are many wild relatives living in the tropics of the world. The Central American heliconia is one example. Satisfying our sweet tooth is a function of sugar mills such as this. Millions of acres of rainforest have been converted into cane fields to provide the raw materials for sugar. The sugar refining process begins by squeezing the sugary juice out of the cane. Further processing consists of filtering and boiling to remove the water. The gooey mass is then spun in a centrifuge to remove the molasses and other heavy byproducts. The end result is recognizable in any language. One use for sugar, which it is hard to find fault with, is in the manufacturing of chocolate. The source of chocolate is the seed pod of the cacao tree. The flowers and subsequent fruits grow directly from the trunk of the tree in a characteristic known to botanists as cauliflory. Each seed pod contains about 30 seeds, or cocoa beans. These are fermented with the surrounding pulp for about a week. They are then dried, crushed, and cured for up to a year to develop their full flavor and aroma. Cocoa is made by pressing out excess cocoa butter, and chocolate is made by adding sugar, vanilla, milk, and additional cocoa butter. Probably the greatest cause for destruction of tropical forests has been for the production of coffee. The bright red berries are typically picked by hand. They are then brought to processing plants for drying and sorting. Drying is frequently a matter of simply spreading the beans on the ground to dry in the sun. In spite of the lushness and beauty of tropical forests, much of it is unsuitable for sustained agriculture because of its special nutrient cycle. A type of fungus known as mycorrhiza grows on and within the roots of rainforest trees. They take the place of fine root hairs of temperate trees. The mycorrhiza fungi short-circuit the nutrient cycle by allowing the roots to extract nutrients directly from fallen trees and forest litter. Because of the warm, humid environment, the process goes on year-round with the result that a rich layer of topsoil never gets a chance to develop. Without expensive fertilizers, a cleared rainforest is good for 1 or 2 seasons of crops at best. The result is a very wasteful form of agriculture known as slash and burn. A patch of forest is cleared and burned. After growing a crop or two, it is abandoned and another patch is cleared. Because of erosion, lack of nutrients, and insects, the abandoned forest becomes an ever-increasing wasteland. Probably the most wasteful use of rainforests has been for cattle production. The growing demand for cheap beef has created quick buck opportunities for land speculators. Unfortunately, the price is anything but cheap. In most cases, the pastures are created by simply burning down the forest, with no attempt being made to utilize even the wood. It and everything else living in the forest is simply sacrificed for short-term profit. This lonely giant is all that remains of a once magnificent forest, and because of poor soil fertility, many acres of cleared rainforest are required to support a single cow. The forces of erosion and overgrazing soon complete the job of converting the forest into a desert. If what we already know about rainforest ecology isn't enough, the prospects for the unknown demand a second look. Research tells us that for every known species in the world, there are at least 5 more that haven't even been discovered yet. It is entirely possible that the cure for every disease on Earth already exists and is simply waiting to be discovered. An excellent example of the ease with which species can be lost is the golden toad. This bright little fellow was not only recently discovered, but it is known to exist only in an area of several acres in a cloud forest in Costa Rica, and nowhere else on Earth. Fortunately for the golden toad, his forest is now protected as a nature reserve. Not so fortunate are the remaining wilderness areas of the world. Considering that the vast majority of medicines and drugs are of plant and animal origin, the unknown species we are destroying hold the hope of the future. How would you like to explain to some future generation that the cure for cancer was lost for all time because we needed more chopsticks? And if you must eat hamburgers, eat small ones and don't ask, "Where's the beef?"